Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the NFL DFS video for Week 6. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over my core picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel. It's going to be one player at each position. You don't necessarily have to play all five together, but it is five players that I do like highlighting for this week overall. If you're looking for some more additional advice, I do have my NFL DFS sheets posted for free. It's going to be up on the community tab, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on the Sports Affiliation website. If you're interested in a more in-depth player pool beyond that, definitely feel free to check out my Patreon page. Very small monthly donation over there. But without further ado, we'll get right into it with the DraftKings side. We're going to start off at that quarterback position. We're going to go with Matthew Stafford here of the Los Angeles Rams. He's at $6,400, currently averaging over 21 fantasy points per game. And he's going against the Baltimore Ravens, who have been really poor so far this season on defense and really banged up at this point in time. So I definitely do like the upside of Matthew Stafford in this matchup overall. He's been doing really well the last 2 weeks, so definitely do expect that trend to continue once again. Then we move down to running back. We got Rico Dowdle here, who will be getting the start once again for the Carolina Panthers. He's at $5,800, going against Dallas Cowboys, who have not had the greatest defense so far this year. So would expect a pretty big performance out of him once again. Probably not as big as you saw last week versus Miami, where he did run for over 200 yards, but still a pretty strong performance regardless, and probably going to be a very popular player overall this week. And then lastly, I will mention that Rico Dowdle was averaging about 11 fantasy points per game, but last week was his first start of the season, so do keep that in mind. And then we move down to wide receiver. We're going to go with Stephon Diggs here. He's at $5,800, and he's currently averaging over 14 fantasy points per game. He's been doing really well as of late. Goes against that Saints defense. Been a little bit better against wide receivers so far this season, but I think it's because they've been pretty poor versus fantasy running backs. But I do expect a pretty good game out of Stephon Diggs this week overall at a pretty reasonable price tag at the same time as well. Then we move down to tight end. I thought about not picking on the Carolina Panthers this week since they've been pretty bad versus tight end so far this season. But Jake Ferguson, at his price tag, at his volume so far this year, $5,300, currently averaging 17 fantasy points per game. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is out once again, so definitely do like his upside in this matchup. If you're looking for a little bit cheaper tight end, I would go down to David Njoku at $3,500 as he's going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those were kind of the two that I was debating in for the core picks overall. And then last but not least, we're playing the Colts defense. Once again, it seems like most weeks I've kind of just been playing them. They've been really good so far this season as they are averaging 10 fantasy points per game at $3,300. Go against the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray's banged up at this point in time. I believe he is a game time decision, so you're either going to get banged up Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett, so it could be a pretty good matchup for them overall. But with that being said, if you were to go with the five players that I do currently have this year, you have $23,400 remaining, just over $5,800 remaining per player. So at this point in time, looks a little bit more like a balance build type of day. Obviously, if you want to pay down at like tight end from Jake Ferguson down to David Njoku, could open up a decent amount of money there at the same time as well. Not quite as many values as we saw last week, especially like at that running back position, but some decent values out there at the same time as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks over there as well. So we're going to start off at the quarterback position. I'm going with Matthew Stafford once again. He's at $7,700, currently averaging over 21 fantasy points per game. Going against Baltimore Ravens, their defense has not been great so far this year. You can see on the FanDuel side that they are second to last against fantasy quarterbacks so far this season. Matthew Stafford's played really well in the last two games, so I would expect that trend to continue once again. And he's got a pretty reasonable price tag on the FanDuel side for this week overall. Running back, I'm going with the paydown option. You know, if you don't want to play him, I definitely do understand it, but I got Hassan Haskins here. He's at $5,600. Technically, he's only averaging half a fantasy point per game at this point in time. Him and Kamani Vidal will probably split the workload, but I would assume Hassan Haskins gets the goal line work. So if he can get a touchdown or maybe even two in this game, could be a good performance for him at $5,600. We saw what Rico Dowdle was able to do against this Miami defense last week. So there is definitely that upside to be had there, although the Chargers are playing with a little bit of a banged up offensive line at this point in time as well. And then we move down to wide receiver, going with Stephon Diggs. Once again, he's at $5,900. So on FanDuel, he's only $100 more expensive than he is over on DraftKings. Typically don't see that. He's currently averaging just over 11 fantasy points per game. Goes against the New Orleans Saints. Like I mentioned on DraftKings, they've been a little bit better against fantasy wide receivers so far this season than we expected. But a lot of that is probably just they've been poor against the running backs in terms of fantasy points. If the touchdowns swing the opposite way, if Stephon Diggs gets a score, if he gets over 100 yards receiving, he's going to be a very, very good play at $5,900. And then on the opposite end of that game, we're going to go with Juwan Johnson. He's at $5,200, kind of a pay down option at tight end. Typically, I like paying down on the FanDuel side. He is going against the New England Patriots, who have been pretty poor against tight ends so far this season, so I definitely do like his upside, averaging about 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He wasn't the greatest in their most recent game. I do believe he was a little bit banged up for that game. I think he's healthy at this point in time, and if this game ultimately ends up being a little bit more back and forth, if Alvin Kamara ends up missing for this game, they're going to need playmakers on offense, and Juwan Johnson could definitely be one of them. And then last but not least, we move down to the Los Angeles Rams defense. They're at $4,400, currently averaging 7 fantasy points per game. They're going against the Baltimore Ravens. Backup quarterback Cooper Rush will be leading the charge once again. That Baltimore Ravens offense didn't look too good last week versus the Texans. The Rams have a pretty good defense just in general, so I would not be surprised if the Rams put up a decent point total at a reasonable price tag on the FanDuel side for this week overall. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do currently have this year, you have $31,200 remaining, $7,800 remaining per player. Worked in a couple value options here, so you got a little bit more room available on the FanDuel side. Obviously, if you don't want to pay down for Hassan Haskins, definitely do understand that. You could definitely pay in the mid-range for running back this week, or work your way up to the top in terms of the pay-up options as well. Jonathan Taylor's obviously out there. Josh Jacobs looks pretty good this week, so a lot of different options out there just in general. Definitely feel free to mix and match as you do see fit. But with that being said, these are my core picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel. As always, if you have any questions related to NFL DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then once again, if you're looking for additional resources for NFL DFS, my NFL DFS cheat sheets for both DraftKings and FanDuel are available. You can find them on the YouTube community tab, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on the Sports Affiliation website. We'll probably post them down in the comment section of this video as well. And then if you're interested in a more in-depth player pool beyond that, definitely feel free to check out my Patreon page. Very small monthly donation over there. You get access to my NFL DFS player pools for a month. You get access to my CFL DFS sheets for a month as well as my NFL snap count spreadsheet. So definitely a lot of useful resources over there. But with that being said, if you're brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we have my CFL DFS video coming out once a week. That typically comes out on Wednesdays. And then I do have my NFL DFS Core Pick video coming out once a week as well. That varies a little bit week to week, whether it comes out on Friday or Saturday. But definitely be on the lookout for all those videos in future weeks as well. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS and PrizePicks. If you're a brand new user to either one of those sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For PrizePicks, it's 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for this week's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in NFL DFS for Week 6.